Talking financial organization and a professional practice does not have to be boring. Are you ready for a few money in, money out ideas? It's Susan Gunn coming directly to your head to make you think. Can you handle the truth? Because she is known for being energetic, laughs a lot, and gives honest, sometimes direct, but always practical advice. It's time now for Money In, Money Out.
Happy New Year, everybody. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that it is a new year with new opportunities. Boy, after 2020, I've decided to take the positive approach to 2021. And doesn't just saying the year 2021 kind of sound like a new movie production of some kind? I know 2020 had all the elements of a twist turning, captivating action movie that had pretty much everything except aliens, though we did have celestial events the last couple of weeks. I am so now glad that 2020 is completely hindsight. Well, we weren't prepared for 2020. Who could have been? Good grief. Every time we turned around. And we would be amiss if we didn't reflect on what we needed to learn as we enter into 2021. I've been trying to do that with the previous podcast, and this podcast is no different. Today, we're going to talk about leadership. I am so excited. Some dentists have been blindsided into leadership roles in 2020 that they were not prepared for and had to fulfill regardless of the pandemic they felt themselves. Many rose to the challenge and took hold of the leadership as they forged ahead with their employees and their families. Many, quite frankly, failed to lead, or lead effectively, maybe. But today, joining me at the table is someone who has always been the voice crying in the wilderness, so to speak, regarding leadership. She has always been a source of encouragement to me and to so many others to the depth of dentist souls about leadership and their choice of words. Words are important. I say that all the time. Words are so important. Katherine Eitel Belt is the creator of Speak, a communications coaching company, a fellow member of the National Speaker Association, and a fellow member of the Academy of Dental Management Consultants. She has been teaching leadership communication for over 30 years now, which is pretty amazing, and is well known for her passionate accomplishments internationally. And by the way, just to let you know, she is a fellow native Texan. So if she starts twanging a little bit, just understand it's probably because she's talking with me. But she did transplant to California very long ago. But I am so excited to have her join us at the table. Hi, Katherine.
Oh, I've got to say howdy now, right? Howdy, Susan.
That works. I try not to twang, but every now and then I'll say a word and just start laughing because it sounds really bad.
I know.
But
We took some goodies over to a neighbor, and we were all trying to decide what we'd bring, and I said, "I'll bring the cake." And they said, "When did cake become a two-syllable word?" I said, "Well, it always is in Texas, right?"
oh my goodness, not and so did you're going to have to we're actually recording this before to the end of the year, but I plan on having a double dose of black-eyed peas and a double dose of collard greens
Yep.
just to ensure for 2021. And so if you're listening to this and you didn't do that and it's not going well for you, you just have to ask yourself, why did you not have black-eyed peas?
That's
So
right. Hoppin' John, Hoppin'
it's a
John.
Southern thing. I know it's a Southern thing. Well, Katherine, long ago, you created something called the Lioness Principle. Tell us a little bit about that, because I actually think that will be the foundation of what we're going to talk about today.
Well, it is. It's the foundation of everything we do at Lion Speak. I'm blessed. The Lioness Principle sort of found me. It is based on the science behind how a lioness teaches her cubs to hunt. That's where we found it. And it came from me watching a Discovery Channel program. I was looking for a story or some sort of a metaphor to be the sort of the container for a program I was putting together, a workshop. And I stumbled across this Discovery Channel program on how a lioness teaches her cubs to hunt, which of course is the one skill they need to survive and thrive. And it turns out in the video that while scientists have definitely identified 7 stages that she takes them through to move them from dependence upon her to complete independence from her, it turns out that while she's definitely does that, the cubs were actually born with the knowledge. They were actually born with the instinct or the wisdom that they needed. And anybody who's ever had a cat, a little house cat, knows this is true. Mammals are born with the raw knowledge to thrive. It's hardwired into our DNA over the millennia. And we have the basic foundation. And so with the lions, it turns out that she knows it. And so she recognizes they're born with it and knows they don't know it. And her job is then not to give them what they need, but to create an environment where she can tease out of them what they already were born with and have them master it. And that principle of recognizing in the people in your pride, in your group, that they came into that group, they came into that work team, they came into that family, they came into that neighborhood, they came into that board of directors with everything they need. They already had the ruby slippers on, but often they don't know it. And we have to know it for them. And our job as leaders is to know it and to create an environment where we can tease out of them what they already are, have an inclination toward. So a good practical example of that is, have you ever walked into a gathering, a party, let's say, and instantly felt connected to, instantly felt like these are my people, or talked to someone individually and it was an instant connection? That is something intuitive that we have. We also know the opposite. We also know when we walk in and it's the opposite. We also have a radar for good leadership. We can, if the fire alarm goes off in an airport, we have an instant radar for who should we follow out of which door. It rises like cream to the top. And so we're hardwired with that inclination to lead, to connect, because humans cannot survive without connection and leadership. We would not make it as a species. So it's fun for us at Lion Speak to, no matter what we're doing, to take a person, whether they're the owner of a practice or a business, whether they're a new manager just promoted into that position, or whether they're someone on the front lines answering the telephone, whatever we're coaching, it's so fun for us to show to them what we know is there, what we know. It's way more than learning how to answer the phone, that they have a life and a career and the ability to impact a lot of people's lives. And we want to show them that this is just one skill we're going to help them master in that environment we're going to create for them where they can become the best version of themselves. So great leaders, I think, know this somehow, and they're able to,
It's like learning the value of pure encouragement.
yeah.
I mean, encouragement is such a lost, unique word, I think, that, um, you just want to pull them out to help them be the very best person that they can be. And,
Mhm.
you hopefully would be able to tell that when you're hiring them, what
Mhm.
they can be. But sometimes it's kind of hard if they don't believe it themselves. You have to somehow help them believe it.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
hard.
it is. It is a challenge. And yet, in some ways, it's very easy, because it's natural to us. It's natural to us. We've all been encouraged by someone. So, have you ever, I always like to say, have you ever worked with someone that you could see something bigger inside of them than they could see in themselves at the time. You could see it, but they
Oh, yeah.
couldn't see
Yeah.
it, And sometimes I think we have to look at ourselves and say, has there been a moment where there was something bigger inside of me that I was bringing to the table at the time? And so it's that pulling out of a bigger capacity to succeed. And we're about that. I mean, we can give people we could give them the 1, 2, 3 steps of how to do whatever it is we're training on. But there's a bigger equation behind, there's a bigger opportunity behind just teaching someone skills. If
Yeah.
most owners and managers I talk to, if I say, what is the perfect employee? What are the characteristics of the perfect employee of your dreams? And Susan, every now and then we get an exception, but by and large, people say some version of, I want people who can think for themselves. I want people who have high integrity. I want people who are self-starters. They're problem solvers. They're, and so who doesn't want someone who can critically think, make decisions, is accountable for themselves, and is a problem solver? And so those are I would rather help people, instead of giving them the answer, learn how to find the answer. That's what I want to bring out. The Lioness Principle is about that. How do we as trainers help people discover that they can be and do more, rather than just give them the answers all the time? So it's a little bit different than, and it's actually, to tell you the truth, the only way training can be sustainable. Because otherwise, the minute that something goes off script, they don't know what to do. But if we
Right.
teach them how to
Right.
think, if we teach them how to relate to the customer or the patient or their coworker, if we teach them how to look at results and what the outcomes are that they seek, they'll go toward the outcome rather than just checking the task off. And that's what we're trying to develop.
Well, and one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was all the Facebook groups that we belong to, and some of the things that we've seen that have been a little disappointed in leadership. And, and quite frankly, if there were leadership fails, it was because we really didn't know what to think about 2020. I mean, I've given so much grace this last year for so many people in their leadership fails because, we didn't know we were going to have a pandemic that's going to affect the whole stinking world. And so, the lack of compassion that we saw, a lack of organization, a lack of delegation in some of these Facebook posts, might have had something to do with, geez, can it be a day of things where they go off? It's the fax machine going off you hear in
Oh.
the background. The phone rang earlier and I turned it off once, but hey, welcome to
That's
2021.
right. That's exactly right.
Gosh. But anyways, back to that.
I'm going to close down a
We've
couple
seen
of
a
my
lot of
programs
those. Yeah,
so that,
we've seen a lot of fails, but there's been a lot of grace given in areas where we've really needed to give grace. And and yet, okay, grace was given. What do we learn from it? You know, it's nice to get grace and it's nice to give grace, but that doesn't mean that you don't pick up the ball and lead your employees during a time that they really need you to lead. And so paint that picture for us, Catherine, if you could, because some of them need that encouragement to pull that leader out and let that leader shine.
yeah. Well, if it was ever, if these skills were important prior to COVID, they are monstrously important now. Um, people are, people and businesses are struggling to find their footing. And I think that will be the case for the next year or two. So yes, so important. So nothing has really changed about how we teach this, and we take a bit of a different tact than some others, because I can only really speak to what has worked for me and for my company and for those that the success we've seen in those that we've coached. So it looks something like this. People can't read your mind. People don't know what we're about and where we're going and what we're shooting for, trying to build, unless we lay it out for them so clearly and so inspirationally that they want to follow, that they are inspired
Wait,
to
are you saying that we should communicate?
follow. Sort of, kind of, yeah.
What?
and
We
and
should say what we're thinking?
yes, we should, and in a very specific way. Um, so, a couple of thoughts. One is, when we go to have, which I know we're going to talk about in a later podcast, but when we go to sit down one on one with, let's say we have an underperforming employee and we want to have a crucial, courageous conversation with them about their behavior and about their results. It is so hard to have that when no baseline had ever been set around behavior, around expectations, around cultural values, around direction and vision. When that's already been established, it's much easier to have that conversation and tie those branches of that conversation back to the trunk of the tree, right? It's because it's strong and straight and clear.
Right.
So everything in the practice, in terms of performance, swirls around the initiation of this first conversation. So we call it a vision alignment conversation. And we typically recommend that this happens once a year at a minimum. And I want to distinguish, though, Susan, that the vision I'm talking about is not the old school vision that we used to build back when we all started consulting. I followed the classic advice that was out there, which was you bring the whole team together and everybody, spends a couple of hours creating this very poetically written, flowery, beautifully sounding verse that was going to go on a frame on the wall or going to go on the website. And it basically changed nothing. It basically changed nothing, boots on the ground. And so I look at that as a marketing exercise. That has value. It absolutely has value to make a promise about who you are to your patient base. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an honest, conversationally delivered declaration of where you want to drive your business and what you want to create in that business for the benefit of the people who are now trying to decide if they want to stay in that business with you and align with that or not, or in the future if they come to work for you, do they want to come to work for a company that is going to be going in this direction and is based on these values. So we help clients when they call us about any kind of cultural or behavioral shift in their business. We start with this conversation, and it's bullet pointed. We just help them bullet point to the degree that they know in the next 3 to 5 years, what's the bullseye we're heading toward? What does it look like in terms of production? What does it look like in terms of facility? What does it look like in terms of how the team works together? What does that picture look like that you cannot wait as an owner to get up out of your bed and get to at 8 o'clock every Monday morning? What does that look like?
Right.
So getting clear.
And I'll
for
tell you that what you just said, their passion has taken a big hit this last year.
Mm-hmm.
The excitement to get out of the bed and to go to their practice has had a little bit of damage. and they've not been so excited with, because they can't just practice dentistry. They
Right.
haven't been able to be the dentist that they've wanted to be, or to be the business owner that they've wanted to be as much. And so they've had that fire taken out of them a little bit, or a little bit of that wind out of their sails,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. So, that's really important. And you're talking about goal planning, not financial. I usually talk about financial goal planning and setting that aside. You're talking about vision planning.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's strategy. Setting
yeah,
specific financial goals is strategy, but what should precede strategy and tactics should be an end game. And end game isn't just
right,
numbers. It's do we like what, are we happy with what we created? Do we enjoy the work? I have one client who does nothing but Invisalign. He has some associates that do other things in his practice, but he spends 100% of his time driving an Invisalign based practice. I have another client that has an implant center, and all they do, he and his brother's a prosthodontist, he's an implant surgeon, and all they do is place and restore implants, and they are booming. And so it is endless what you could create around what you love to do.
right,
But you have to be clear, and we have to, and it changes. I started out as a practice management consultant, and I did that for several decades. And about 8 years ago, I woke up in my 50s and said, I don't love all aspects of this. I can track numbers, but tracking numbers isn't what I love. Like, I see that on my calendar and I don't jump for joy. It's not where my love is. Where my love is in the coaching of great communications. That's the piece that I'm good at, and that's the piece that I really love. And so we jumped off a cliff. I had people working for me who supported practice management systems. And I had to stand up before that group and say, we were going right. When you came to work at Lionspeak, we were going right. And I've decided to go left. And I need to make sure that you know what left looks like and why I'm doing it, and to the best that at some point it's my best guess as to what this is going to look like, but here's what I want to create. And I'm looking for a team that is excited about that future vision and is willing to get in the game with me and help me create that. And so there were some that made the shift and some that didn't, because what we give people through that conversation is an invitation. We're not demanding anything. We are inviting them into the future as we see it. And I always say great leaders and communicators really, at the end of the day, have to do two things when they communicate. They have to communicate clarity and inspiration.
mm-hmm,
One without
mm-hmm,
the other is an incomplete communication. So
right,
if I communicate with my teenager, or I communicate with my parents, or I communicate with a client or an employee or my husband, it doesn't matter, fill in the blank. But I'm hoping they won't leave the conversation confused about what I intended to communicate, right? I want to
right,
create, in my communication, I want to create clarity. And there are very simple techniques to do that. But but I have been accused in the past of creating clarity, and people were very clear when they walked away from the communication what I needed or was asking of them, but they weren't so inspired to do it. And so,
mm,
and we probably have all talked to people who we left the conversation all pumped up, but we really didn't know what our next step was. So one without the other isn't complete. It's the marriage of those two. And so that's what we want to do in this vision communication, is sit down with our teams and say, look, I'll give you a great example, Susan. Um, I had a client who said to me, I have this crazy idea. His practice was in the outskirts of Detroit, and hard hit financially, a hard hit area. And he was a multi-generational dentist. So he was the third dentist to own this practice. His grandfather started it. And his son was just getting ready to graduate from dental school and would be the fourth. So he's lived here all of his life, grown up here. So he says to me, I'm already purchased a practice and I'm in escrow to purchase 2 more in my area. And he said, I've got to relay this vision to my team, but I don't think they're going to accept it well, because the only thing we've had in our small community until now has been 2 types of dentists: private practice dentists, which typically on the whole did high quality work, and corporately owned practices that typically on the whole did not and were much cheaper in terms of their fees. So they see black and white. They see A or B, nothing in between. And he said, I'm tired though of losing patients who have been in our practice for generations because they receive some insurance at work, or they just can't, because we've been so economically hit, they can't afford the level of dentistry that we're doing. And I see these people in the grocery store. I see them at church. I know their families. I love this community. And I want to give them another option. I have no idea if I'm going to be able to pull this off, but I want to see if I can form a small group of high quality practices and get ourselves some leverage, some buying power with a lab, some buying power for supplies, some leverage to be able to offer high quality dentistry better than what they can get at this clinic, for less than what we're charging in my solo private practice, so that we can retain and help more people. And he said, can you help me present that to my team? And I said to him, if you present it just like that, if you say, I don't have all the answers, I don't have this whole game figured out, here's what I'm trying to do, and here's the why behind it. Here's what I do know. Here's what I don't know yet. Here's my motivation. And I'm looking for a team. I'm looking for a group of people that are interested in helping me to accomplish this and learn what we're going to have to learn together along the way. And we prepped him some for that conversation, obviously, and we did a full day retreat with him. But when he stood up and delivered that, my job was then to come back in and facilitate questions, facilitate concerns, which we did. And after that was over and we took our first break, I went into the hallways and into the restroom and overheard conversations from the team like, I was already looking for another job. I had no desire to work for a clinic. I had no idea that was what was behind this. If this makes all the difference to me. And so it was just a good example of, we think our people know, but they don't always know. And so we went back and clarified what did it look like structurally in terms of what he knew, what were the values in how people behaved with one another and showed up for one another, what was important to him. And we did some exercises to make sure that landed really, really clearly with everyone. And then we gave them an invitation. Now that they'd heard this, now that they'd heard what the expectations were going to be, we wanted them, he said, I want you all to stay. But I know that I've changed direction, and it will be a fit for some of you, and for some of you it will not. I hope you all stay, but I would understand if you said, this isn't for me. And it isn't 2 weeks and you're out. We'll sit down one-on-one and we'll figure out how we get you transitioned to where you need to be. I care about you. As individuals, I care about you. So in a week, we will have one-on-one conversations with everyone on the team to see where you are. And there's no wrong answer other than saying you're excited to be on the team and accepting the invitation and not really being. That would be the only wrong answer. Otherwise, we're both going to be good either way. But I want you, if you raise your hand and say, I'm on board, I want you to know what you're getting on board for, because I'm going to have to learn some new skills. We're going to have a middle layer of management we've never had before. There'll be some opportunities for some of you that are interested, and others, you won't be. So it was it's a good example of having from the heart conversation about what your intentions are to create and the why behind it, and making the invitation for people to step into that. Fast forward now, Susan, a few months, and I'm having to sit down with one of the employees to talk about expectations and performance. And as a manager, if I'm a manager in that practice, it's no longer personal because I didn't choose the vision, nor did this employee. But both of us
Right.
put our keys in the car every morning and drive to this practice where we know what the vision is, we know what the values are, we know what the expectations are. And so I, as a manager, now get to have a one on one conversation with this employee about how we get them back in alignment with the vision and values of the practice. And it's no longer personal. But without that being established at the beginning, then it makes every other conversation. And people right now want to feel inspired around a future. They want to know that their leader is okay. They want to know that you're okay. It's okay to say, I'm a little scared. I don't have it all figured out. I've got some worries and concerns, but I am confident we are going to find our answers. I am positive that our direction is still the same, or our direction has changed in this way. When people, I always say, Susan, that I think authenticity and transparency in a leader is sexy. It's sexy. It's sexy. It's not weak. It says, I don't, I don't have all the answers, and I don't have to have all the answers. What I have the answers for is where I want to point, where I want to try to go. And I'm looking to continually have a team around me who's excited about helping this business get there.
Yeah, I think vulnerability has gotten to become a like a nasty word or negative or something. But it really requires what you're talking about, requires the owners to be vulnerable.
It does. And in a strong way, to say, here's what I don't know, and I have every confidence we will figure that out. And here's what I haven't made decisions on these pieces yet, but I will. And when I do, I'll let you know. And that's the kind of honest conversation that people trust. And trust is everything in terms of leadership. Trust is
Yeah,
everything.
and I'll tell you, the conversations that I heard the most about that were on the Facebook pages where they got the most feedback, negative feedback, was not communicating with the employees and not communicating up front. Here's where we're at, and here's what we think, as much as what we know and what we don't know right now, and we don't know. And we know that you're scared to come back, and, we're trying to do everything that we can. And here are the ideas that we've put into place and the safety protocols that we have going forward. Even the patients, I've heard, a lot of practices didn't communicate with the patients. But I heard this amazing story, and I think I've talked about it already, but I've heard practices picking up the phone and calling their senior patients
Yep.
and saying, we just wanted to check in with you. We know we're not a doctor's office, we're the dental office, but we wanted to make sure that you were okay and that you're provided for and that everything's going good for you. Some of them even offered to go pick up groceries
Yep.
and drop them off at their houses for them so they didn't have to get out. I mean, that to me, forget marketing.
I know.
That's just human compassion.
Mhm.
And when you as a leader do something like that, you're setting the precedence. We have that saying, Catherine, and in the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, that tone is always set at the top.
It is.
And so if you're not setting the right tone, then don't be surprised when something bad happens,
Yeah.
like embezzlement.
Yeah.
And so if your tone then is your vision and your passion and truly what does make you get up in the day and get you excited about going to work, So I'm a little bit different. What excites me about getting up and going to work is working on a fraud
Yeah.
case, right? So that's a little weird.
But if you were
But
hiring, if you're building the Susan Gunn team, your team needs to know that that's what we come to do, and that's what we
yeah,
come to move forward. And so it's just it's like laying the foundation of a house. You lay it out and you say here, and I've had leaders say, look, um, recently gotten some coaching, and I'm standing before you today to let you know that I know I have not been the best leader in the past. I have not communicated as well as I could have or maybe should have. And I want to apologize for that. And I want to own that. And I want you to know that starting today, I am stepping into an entirely new level of leadership and an entirely new commitment to this business and to you, to all of us as a team. And there's a lot I have to learn, and I intend to do so. And my intention for today is to invite you all in to a new future where we communicate differently with one another, where we are clear about what we're creating with each other and the standards that we hold together as a team. That is the team I am building starting today. I'm hitting the reboot button on myself, and for all of you and all of us, I'm hitting the counters to zero, and we're going to start fresh. And I'm asking you to ask your questions, to listen to this intently, to share your concerns with me, because at the end of today, we're going to book some appointments one-on-one to sit down and say, are you in for this new future? If you're in, then you really won't mind the push that's coming. I'm going to be pushed by a coach. You all are going to be being pushed to learn and grow in certain ways. And if you're in, then you'll love the push. If you're not, you won't. And that's where we may find some separation. So it's someone claiming that this has been hard
yeah,
and I maybe didn't do it all. You can do this anytime. You can hit those counters to zero anytime, but you have to step up and say the buck stops here. I
yeah. You just gave them an awesome script, by the way. So the listeners, you guys, that was just awesome. That whole just little segment right there, you could say to your employees, and they would just go, "Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay."
They
I
say
mean, they
all
might
upsets.
actually just sigh.
Thank you for that. I think it's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah,
And so clear, authentic, and
yeah,
inspirational. It's got all the elements of a great leadership communication. Um,
from the heart.
and it feels honest, and that feels like someone we could trust, that we could get behind. They didn't say they had it, they didn't say my way or the highway. What they said was, I'm going in a direction and I'm looking for a team that is excited about helping me go in that direction. And it's okay if you're not. It's okay. There's full respect here for all choices, but we're going to make some choices. And here's
Yeah,
the truth. I've made mine. The leader is saying, I've made mine. Right or wrong, good or
right.
bad, I've made mine. And I'm inviting you to make your own. And I respect you have your own to make. This may or may not be a good fit for you in your future career and your family. We're going to continue to see patients with this PPE, with these protocols. I'm going to build and push this practice forward in this direction. And I absolutely respect if that does not align with your own personal values, with your own personal safety requirements, with your own family requirements. I absolutely 100% respect it. So my job is to clarify for you the invitation. And your job is to ask whatever questions you need to get clear about that invitation and then to make a good decision for you. And I'll respect either way you make it.
And the ones that give negative feedback on the vision, because I can just, you know that there are those that are in the practice that think they know so much better than the dentist. But in the end, it's the dentist that owns the business. Or as we say in my fraud classes, they're the boss. And so it's their vision and their passion because it's their business There'll be a lot of people that are saying, or some that will say, you don't know what you're talking about, and that's not sustainable. There'll be the negative Nellies. And so, how do you handle those negative Nellies? Because they're out there,
They are,
and
Susan.
they'll shoot down visions like, sometimes like family members do.
Yes,
So,
yes. Well, I adore those people. And I say that slightly tongue in cheek, but not completely. Because it's those conversations that give leaders practice sessions. That's
mhm,
where we strengthen our leadership communication muscle, is in those conversations, not with the good ones. So
right.
I believe the clearer you are with your vision and what you're trying to build and create, the more people it will not align with. In other words, the more general the vision, then every more the more people can align with it. But the more specific you become, you can anticipate being more people who will not align with it. So you
Yeah.
do have to get good at these conversations. So here's a couple of tips for that. It is freeing to not have to be right. So, in other words, I'm not claiming the vision for Lion Speak because I think it's the only way to run a communications coaching company. It's the only way for me. And I'm clear I'm not a good fit for everyone, and that doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them, uh, it doesn't make them anything. My job, and so when we do these retreats, typically how it goes, they're called vision calibration retreats. So when we do them virtually now, we've had to figure out how to do them virtually, but but
Yeah.
in January we have 3 virtual ones, and we still have one at the end of the month. We'll see if it still holds, but we have one in Houston, for that's in
Oh,
person.
wow.
Yeah, it's our second time to do a retreat for them. And so how it typically, I kick it off. So I would stand up and talk about what's the purpose of this retreat, and what is the purpose of vision and values, and whose is it to write. And just as an echo to what you said earlier, Susan, I say to them, there's only one person in this room who has, in my opinion, the prerogative or the responsibility, and the responsibility to claim the vision and direction for this business. Who is it? And I wait for someone to give me the answer, and that someone will say, Dr. So and so, right? Or sometimes they'll say the doctors. So let's just say there's one owner and some associates. I'll say, I'm actually looking for a different answer, not the doctors, but the doctor. The owner or owners are the only people or person who should and can claim the direction of this business. Now, any of us, myself included, could go out and start a business and decide to take it in any direction we wanted. But until that day, and for all the days that follow, that any of us put our keys into the ignition of our car and drive to someone else's business to work there, what we are saying when we do that is, I'm agreeing to go where you're going. I'm agreeing to go where you're going. And the owner's responsibility is to be clear what I'm signing up for. What am I signing up for? And what am I not signing up for? So for example, at Lion Speak, we have a culture of growth. And this is what we train into most of the companies that we coach with. We establish a culture of growth, which means that every single person, if they decide to work there, sits down and has a conversation ongoing and frequently about what they are working on in terms of growing themselves as a professional within this business. So my goal is that if you stopped any employee in the hallway and said, what are you currently working on in your growth trajectory, and where are you in that trajectory, that they could immediately tell you, I'm currently working on my conflict resolution skills, or my treatment presentation skills, or my I'm currently working on whatever it is, my own accountability right now, or understanding my numbers, whatever that thing is. And the expectation is, leader included, that everyone, when they accomplish that, takes the next thing on, and the next thing, and the next thing. So there is never a time where we are not improving ourselves to very seriously. So you can imagine, if you have an employee who isn't interested in growth, that doesn't make them wrong. There's a lot of people who have personal lifestyles that they want to go to
Mhm.
work, do a technical job, get paid a fair rate, and go home. They don't want to think about the business. They don't want to think about growing their skills. That's all they want. Is there anything wrong with that? No, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's lots of businesses that need that kind of employee. My business wouldn't be one of them. I have people working all over the country. I can't babysit people. They've got to be able to run their own schedules and solve their own, mostly their own problems. And I need that kind of person. So it's not a good fit for everyone. So getting really clear about that fit and making that invitation and is the beginning of developing a team that will perform at a high level.
That was awesome. That great information, I'll tell you. And encouraging, even encouraging to me. I don't have employees. It is just me, but so encouraging to hear about the vision. And I liked when you talked about the purpose of vision and values. Just even hearing that phrase together, kind of reminds us that there is a purpose to vision and values. And if you felt a little lost in 2021, maybe it was because those vision and those values got muddled
Yeah,
a little
and they
and
changed.
and attacked.
That's why
Yeah, and
they
attacked.
did, and things have changed. And I think standing up and saying, here's what I thought. In January, I had a retreat with my own team in January of 2020, and then March hit.
Hmm.
And so the retreat
Oh,
that the
yeah.
retreat that I will have with my team in February, it'll be February this year, but in February, I have a slightly different tweak to the direction. That's why we don't just have it. It's not one and done. We have it. Our goal as an owner and as a leader is to constantly be reminding them where we're going, constantly.
Right.
And so I do it formally once a year, but informally every time we meet. If we have a decision before the team and we have let's say our monthly meeting, we're looking at that decision. And my job is to remind them that the decision we make still needs to revolve around getting us here in 3 years. So let's keep that in mind as we make this decision on this thing we're going to invest in or not invest in. We've been looking at some marketing firms to help us with a new initiative. And as we talk about that, I want to be really clear and make sure my team is reminded of what it is we're creating and what it is we're not. And that's my job as an owner and a leader. So I want them to feel hopeful. I want them to feel that they can trust me, that I will say, I don't know when I don't know, but I will always know what I intend to try to create and how I want people to behave along the journey. And it's a
Right.
fit for some and it's not a fit for others. And so the clearer I am, the better team I put together and the better. And it's okay to say, you know what? I didn't know what I didn't know, but now I know better. And so here we go.
Yeah. Vision
Yeah.
is good. Vision is good. And that whole passion. My vision wasn't to become a big company.
Hmm.
And I really like working
Yeah.
by myself. And I think when you work by yourself doing what I do, it turns out better.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but that's just
Yeah,
my
that's the
business.
beauty of
And
being an
so,
American, isn't
yeah,
it? It's the beauty of being an American is that
yeah,
we can have it any way we want.
right,
And so I say, what do you
right,
want? Don't forget what your colleagues are doing, or just what when you look at it. I
right,
mean, some people love to treat children. Some people love endo. Some people love perio. Some people love starting at their huddle at 6:30 in the morning and being done at 3:30 or 4. Yeah, right. And others of us go, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not even out of bed at 6:30, So it's just it we get to have it any way we want. And so
Right.
create it. We're no victim. We're really big on helping people step out. We're not a victim of COVID.
Well, and if you think about it, so one of the things that I've done um, during the pandemic was I painted, and I'm not a painter, so I'll tell you that way up front. I am so not a painter. I am an admirer of the greats and have been to art museums all over the world and have loved I love, especially the National Art
Mm,
Gallery, just the purposefully placing of the benches so you can
yeah.
sit and
Hmm.
stare at these paintings for the longest times. I'm so analytical. I'll sit there and I'll look at the brush strokes to see what it took for them to put this painting together so that I someday, sometimes 400 years later, would sit in front of it and admire it and how beautifully it was painted. And so I had a glass piece, a very long story short. My dad was a home builder and built a solid garage door for the house that I inherited. And their time came that I had to have it replaced, and it just broke my heart that I did. But I had two of the panels cut up into like frames. And so the window panel, they're like framed windows, framed glass. And so I took the glass out and I painted a pecan cluster because the house is in a pecan grove. And I painted a pecan cluster on two of the panels and gave them to my siblings who were also raised on this property, gave them to them for Christmas. And the whole process of the painting and the thinking about it, there was so much that related to building a business and having a clear idea of what I wanted that painting to look like in the end. I'm not sure that it completely looked like what I wanted it to, because in my head, I was like, Monet, I'm going to do, but it didn't turn out exactly like that. But, I just, it's building a business is no different than having the vision in your head of what you want it to look like and the whole point of what you want that to offer to whoever is a part of it in the end. I don't know if any of the greats, you know, I'm sure Monet never knew that I was going to be at the Musée d'Orsay someday and stare at his painting for
Yeah.
almost an hour. I mean, my goddaughter's got a little peeved at me for taking so much time. That's like my favorite. And it was just
Yeah.
awesome to
Yeah.
look at it. And you know that they were passionate, in their works. They weren't always, most of them were not always recognized as great painters until, of course, after they were long
Yeah.
gone. Um, but but it's that kind of passion. They still kept at it. Can you imagine being a painter and being ridiculed and talked bad about, and you still loved and you still had the
Yeah, I
passion to
mean
do
that's
what
what
you
keeps
wanted to
us
do?
going is that drive through the hard times. I mean, Susan, you and I've been doing this business for enough decades that this is not the first big hurdle that we faced. You mentioned before our interview 9/11, where our calendars, similar to
Yeah.
COVID, our travel calendars and speaking calendars were wiped clean. I've been through the .com crash. I've been through the housing market crash. I've been, in 2008. I've survived all kinds of tragedies within my own business and industry, and so this is not the this is COVID is one of many hurdles that businesses and dental practices will have to overcome. It's a hurdle. And just like in 2008, when that recession hit so hard, I remember I was doing practice management consulting at the time, and I had one big fee for one big program. And it was no big deal prior to the crash because people could just write a check out of their equity line of credit and off we went. And though the minute that bubble burst, those were gone. And so I had to, and we watched a
Yeah.
lot of our colleagues go out of business, but I had clients. We changed the way we did business. We pared it down and did little, had little offerings, and we wouldn't go back to the way we used to do it before. And that was a gift from that hardship. But I remember there were dentists that thrived during that time, and it was tough, and there were some that didn't. And so the same will be true for this,
Right.
Susan. There are already dental offices and businesses that are thriving, and they will continue to thrive. We had one of the busiest Decembers in the history of my company, and the summer was
Yeah.
scary. The summer was really scary because we did not know. But I made some decisions that has kept my team together. And I was honest about what I didn't know and what I couldn't promise. I was honest with myself about what really mattered that we stayed the course on and what we could be flexible with. They were looking to me for that. They were looking for me. Are we going to be okay? What are we doing now that your calendar is completely cleared of speaking engagements? Now what? And so I think it's just been an exercise in, if you're going to be a business owner, um, and you want to build a business that requires a team to do it, then the one non-negotiable is we have to, and we all have different personalities. Some of us would take 5 minutes to do this and others would take 5 hours. But the bottom line, the underlying non-negotiable is that if you want a team that you enjoy seeing when you come to work and that you really trust, has the business's best interest at heart, you have to go first. You have to go first. You have to have their back. You have to
Hmm.
step up front and be able to say, this is where we're going. This is what I own. No victims here. And we're going to figure this out. And so there have been lots of
Yeah,
creative.
and that's why it's
Yeah,
called leading.
yeah. So there is hope. There's lots of hope.
Yeah.
There are so many reasons
Yeah.
to assume that the next few years are going to be really good for those who focus on building great teams and great cultures in there. Yep.
Exactly. And
Mhm. Mhm.
flexibility, fluid. It's like I alluded to a little bit ago. I said it's been a little bit like a battlefield in that you've had to adjust depending on
Sure.
what's been happening.
And we still don't know how the story ends.
It's,
We don't know how the story.
growing up
We don't know.
yeah, no, we
And
don't.
but
It's
we know
still
where
not
we are
over.
today and we know where we want to go. And we just will, maybe you're going
Yep.
to reclaim your vision every 90 days for right now, you know, just based on,
Yeah, I mean, I I started this podcast. I was already planning on it, but I started this podcast as a result of not being able to
yeah,
be in front of my audience. I needed a way to still get them the information that they need to hear, and then to bring so many other valuable people like
mhm,
you to the table that they could hear what valuable
yeah,
information they need. And so I started that, and I did probably you've done this too. I created virtual presentations that were bite sizes of
mhm.
the bigger presentations, so that we'd have something to offer for the virtual market. So we've learned that flexibility too, and I think this is such a valuable thing. Oh my gosh, you've given us so much information. This has
Well,
been
thank you.
amazing, Catherine.
Thank you for
I knew it
having me.
would be.
It's such a delight to be on, and I hope that we breathe some hope and some um, inspiration into the hearts and minds of the business owners and managers that are listening to your podcast, because there's a lot to be hopeful about, and we have control we have control over how we react. We might not have control over the actual events, but we can definitely control how we respond. And everyone's looking to leaders uh, in terms of how are they responding. And so if we can help in any way,
Yeah,
we really want to be
absolutely.
that voice that you can guide your teams better than you ever have in the past. And now this is a battlefield was a good analogy. Battlefield is a good analogy because it's in battle where leaders are born and others aren't, right? It's in the battle. It's
Hmm.
not in the, it's easy to run a great,
Right.
successful business when everything is going well, but it requires special focus and special intention and a special set of skills to be a success when the chips are down. And and you absolutely can do it now. Absolutely.
Yeah, this has been so good. Thank you so much. And I will absolutely put your contact
Great.
information in the show notes so that they can reach out to you should they want
Yes.
your
Yes.
retreat virtually or in person. Those are awesome. I hear
Yes.
about those all the time. And so those are great team building things. Catherine has long been the one I go, hey, I need this team building thing. Let me dig through what she's given me in the past and see if I can find something. And so I'll put
Great.
all your contact info, and your website has a ton of information of what you have to available. So hopefully, if they need some help in that coaching part, that they will contact you. And I'll tell you, now is the time to get the assistance that you need in an area that you might not be so skilled at. And so, if there's an expert that can help you, please reach out to Catherine, and
Yeah, we'd
because
love to. We'd love
she
to
can help.
support you. And we're
You don't need
we're
to
we're
fly out.
sensitive that, we have to make it available and accessible to people right now given the conditions. And so we've taken what we used to do live only and created some virtual options, and they're just working out great. So we'd love to support you, even if it's just a conversation. So um, let us know how we can help.
Well, I am thrilled that you were with us today. And if you loved this podcast, guess what? She's going to join us again in March and talk about the communication part of that difficult conversations part that she alluded to. But we're real excited about that too. We were going to try to cram everything in. I would just want you to notice that time, Catherine.
That's
That's why
right.
we didn't cram both of these into one because we talked about an hour
Well,
on
I'll
this one.
preface that.
So
You're
that
welcome.
was thank you
I'll just
so
give you a
much.
little teaser that we have a little easy 4-step process that leaders and managers and anyone who has conversations they're avoiding because they want to have them, but they don't think they'll go well, or maybe they haven't gone well in the past. And we've developed a really simple, something you can remember in the moment, to sit down with someone or even a group of people, but particularly one on one, and have what we call a courageous conversation about things that need to be different. We're going to give you the framework for that. And yeah, yep.
Awesome. I can't wait. Actually, that might help
Oh,
me
they are. They're life
in other
skills. They're
areas
life
too.
skills. So
That'd be great.
thank
Awesome.
you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Again, Catherine is going to join us back again in March. And I wanted to let you know that Kate Williford and I will be together again on January 18th talking about it. This is going to be kind of a fun one. We're going to talk about one of our favorite old books, The
Mm.
Millionaire Next Door. It's an oldie, but it is a goodie. And there are so many things that are relevant to business that you won't want to miss. So you need to tune in for that. Then on February 1st, we're going to have another really in the embezzlement news podcast. Janice Jansen and I are going to be talking about another massive embezzlement case that hit the news a few years back. This one has as many turns and twists as the Collins Street Bakery embezzlement case.
I
And you know
do.
about Collins Street Bakery, don't you, Catherine? Everybody in Texas knows about Collins Street Bakery. Teresa Duncan and I talked about that on her podcast. Nobody told me that. And so if you've missed that podcast, you can find it listed on my website. And I'll include the link in the show notes because that was a really good one. I will tell you what, 2021, I've been afraid to say it will be better, but I can say that I am way better prepared for whatever it holds because of 2020. I guess if we could say that that was the silver lining or the blessing out of 2020, is that I feel like I'm a little bit better for 2021. And I think, we kind of talked about that today. Just, a tad on talking about how that is better. Thanks for listening. And please share this with your Facebook groups and your dental friends or your business friends so that they can be better prepared for what's ahead as well. Until the next time, thanks, Katherine, and stay safe.
That's a wrap for this podcast of Money In, Money Out. Thanks for listening. Be sure to write down the most valuable tip you learned today so you don't forget it. And remember, you can find out more about all the valuable books and services Susan has to offer at www.susangunsolutions.com.